Hey everyone, my name's Kaif, and with me I have my very good friend Surya.
Hey guys, we are starting a brand new YouTube channel, Everything Cyber, where we are excited on going about different topics, whether be it cybersecurity or some technical topics.
And on top of that, we will have tons of hands-on technical sessions where we explore new technologies, review the latest and greatest tools, and much, much more. The goal of this channel is to grow the thinking muscles and hands-on knowledge of both our listeners and ourselves.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on this journey, and let's jump on to this episode. Oh, we are live.
Awesome. Thanks, Surya. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Everything Cyber. My name's Kaif, and with me I have Surya.
Hey guys.
So today is our episode number
3.
And today we are going to talk about identity in modern workplaces.
Yeah, Kev. It's a very interesting topic,
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's been brewing and evolving over time. So I was wondering, to start off with, did you have any particular thoughts in regards to that?
Yeah. So what first I would like to cover what do we mean by identity in modern
Mm-hmm.
workplaces? And when I say that, how I am translating is how we access to data or useful resources through different applications, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's our authentication and authorization and all those shenanigans. So why are we discussing this? The reason being, identity issues
Mm-hmm.
is the most prevalent issues in the industry now. And
Yeah.
it's not my words. If you look at the new OWASP 2021,
Yep.
broken access control has gotten the title of the number one vulnerability seen across the industry.
Yep.
And even at my organization, when I'm doing security reviews or code reviews, authorization and authentication issues are the most common ones. And
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the most type of attacks that are very common in the industry,
Yep.
whether it's all the way from supply chain attacks to more social engineering attacks, they have some element of getting the credentials, misusing some trust, and an element of identity misuse baked into it. That's why I really feel that there will be a shift in the industry. I already can feel the winds of change, that a new way of how we do access control and authorization is slowly dawning upon us.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's been coming long time. You can
mhm.
see that it's been changing slowly over a period of time. Maybe there's more forces today. And if you look at one of the key concepts that's been showing up recently is like probably zero trust.
Mhm.
We had it. You know, the reason that we are even talking about zero trust today is like I think we need to
But
go.
before that, I
Yeah.
would like to acknowledge that this is a very overused buzzword. So we apologize for that, but it really has substance, doesn't it, Surya?
Yeah, I think the main reason that it's an issue is that zero trust is a concept, right?
Hmm.
It's not a solution. A solution of utilizing the concept of zero trust involves using multiple solutions. It's not just like you have this one solution and it gives you zero trust. There's
Okay.
nothing like that in today's world that exists that fits everyone's scenario. It's
So
like,
that vendor who promises me that buy their product and I'll have zero trust,
yeah,
that's half true, is it?
you could say, yeah, I would say you're getting a part of it. So you're
Mm,
getting you're getting the part where like maybe I don't know if someone is like identity, so I'll give you the part where you can manage your least privileges. So or you get just in time access. So it's giving like a part of it.
of zero
It's
trust.
of
Yeah.
zero trust. It's not like you're getting the complete zero trust. There's still
Mm,
like the other parts that's missing out. But it's a concept that is surely growing. Uh, a buzzword, of course, at the start to get some sales. And then I think the reason it's coming today, if you think about evolution of zero trust, right? We initially started off with like an intranet. So an office environment would usually be like, hey, I have my own company's environment. It's in this island. You could think about it. And all of my services sit on inside this, right? And then slowly we started adding or connecting to external services. So we had like cloud CRMs. You can start connecting to Salesforce, or we started adding more cloud services. So we can have cloud as like our IaaS services, our PaaS services, or even our SaaS services, right?
So you're talking about the complexity increasing,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
it's like this perimeter starts, so everyone before, all your services sat within this perimeter, but now your services are starting to sit outside the whole
Yeah.
cloud
And with
setup.
the whole
Yeah,
COVID,
I
we
was
can
gonna
see how
come to
much
that.
it
Yeah,
was. Yeah.
yeah. Like the whole then the next stuff that started is like users are now not inside your network. Users are not within your office space, right? People are not sitting in their offices and working anymore. We are now remote. You could say it's like a remote world. You could say so. We have users in the internet, so they're coming from the internet into our space and then doing
Hmm.
work, right? So all of this is like slowly blurring the line of our perimeter. Like, hey, can we actually start trusting users inside our network? And this the concept of like both users and our services not being inside this island, like that you kind of spawned up the concept of zero trust. Like, hey, we need to still protect our data, but how
Hmm.
do we do that? Like, how can we build trust to ensure that our data is protected, right? Like, if you think about zero trust by design, it's designed like internet first, so everyone is coming from the internet. So that's the concept behind it. And then like after that, we use that trust for both the internet and the intranet, if you think about it. And like in the current setup, most orgs, if you think about it, like in the old, now I'm not saying old way, it's still widely used,
The
in
traditional way,
yeah,
let's call it.
traditional way. Yeah, you have your intranet, right? And I'm a remote user. I'm at my house. I'm using the internet. So to have a secure communication channel between me and the intranet, I connect via VPN, right? Uh, you could say it's secure to a level, but the issue with VPN is that a lot of times that happen is that sometimes the VPN auth details can start getting compromised, right? And now that's compromised. Someone else is using the same VPN credentials to now get into your environment. They're in your environment now, and then what? You trust them, right?
Mm.
So,
So let's say, to make it simple, I see my colleague, let's say I call it Neil, my
mm-hmm.
brother's name. I see my colleague Neil every day in the work
Yeah,
with an employee badge. Because I see them every day,
mm-hmm.
I assume trust, right?
Yeah,
They're good. But let's say one day, just because I see them every day doesn't mean I should trust them with everything. It could be the case that they were fired a week before and now they're here to steal corporate data, right? So
yeah,
I should verify every time I see them that they actually are who they are. And in the past, it used to be what you're saying with that perimeter is, imagine our house.
yeah,
Our house has a boundary. So we had very tight checks to get into that
yeah,
inside the boundary, but obviously it had some holes here and there, and people could come in. Once you're inside that boundary, there was very little security checks. And that is the issue of, giving sometimes people too much access once they are authenticated, and
yeah.
that can really lead to misuse.
Absolutely, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And that that kind of brings us into some of the core principles of zero trust. So, there are like three main ones. You have like verify explicitly, or sometimes called always trust,
Hmm.
uh, always build trust, sorry. And then you have least privilege,
Least privilege,
and then you have assume breach, right?
assume
So
breach.
yeah, so these core concepts are like kind of adding up on each other if you think about it. So like
Mm.
for verify explicitly, we always want to confirm that we are doing authorization and authentication every
Authentication properly, yeah.
time, and it's like built up on certain factors, like your location, your authentication details, and certain other factors can add up to help you gain this, right? Gain this trust. Least privilege is a very, you could say it's an old concept, but it's a very important one in the
I
sense.
actually love this one. This is my favorite one, and I'll very quickly share a very short
Yeah.
story. So, in Atlassian, we have this initiative called Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of non-profit charity organizations can come us and ask all kinds of help, right?
Yeah.
And let's say a lot of companies come up and say, "Oh, can you help us make our this part of the software or make our website? We are just a charity organization. We're trying to do this good." And as part of it, we also get security requests. And I do a lot of pen tests of these orgs, and I think I've
Mm-hmm.
done 4 to 5 so far. All of these, the number one issue I see is obviously authentication related. And a very common one I've seen is with the access control of APIs. So the initial APIs where the user and the application is touching or the point of contact, let's say the login or the home page, etc., is very well guarded, right?
Yep.
The security is properly done. But once a user is logged in, then the security just drops. Just because they are logged in, does that mean they are allowed to look at this data? There's very few verification of that. Just
True.
because someone has, I'll be a bit more application security terms. Let's say whenever someone logs in, we assign them a token, right? This
Yep.
is your token. Show the token everywhere um, to show us that you're a logged in
Logged in.
user.
Yep.
So what a lot of companies then forget to do is verify that, hey, that token means you're a very valid user, but where are you supposed to go
Yeah.
with that token? How deep can you go in? That's a very common thing I see, that once you're verified, you're never challenged again. So
Yep.
this concept of always verify, never trust, it in each and almost as many points possible is I love that a lot.
Yeah, I
That's
absolutely
gonna
agree.
solve a lot of pains and tears of
Yeah,
developers.
another issue that zero trust like tries to address is like reduce your impact. So like one of the concepts within like least privilege that we have is basically to only provide privileges as you need it. So it's called like just in time access, right? So if
Hmm.
I want to deploy a particular instance and I need to elevate my privileges, so it'll only provide you just for that a particular duration that you're elevated, and then you can access to your deployment, and then you're downgraded back to your old level,
Mm.
right? So this allows you to reduce your impact, which ties into the next one, which is basically assume breach. So hey, like we can basically, the goal of this is that it kind of ties into the other two kind of implicitly. Basically, the goal of this concept is that you want to reduce the impact radius that you're going to have, basically,
Yeah.
right? You always want to like assume that some breaches happen. So what would you do if a breach has happened? You want to like segment your network, so make sure that it's harder for a user from one network to go to the other network, so you're going to stop lateral movements.
Like that layers of onion kind
Yeah,
of model, right?
exactly. And then the same thing with least privilege. So you want to assume, like, you want to make sure that the user does not have all the privileges. Like, he gets privileges as it's needed. So again, you're reducing it. So that's the whole point where assume breach kind of ties into. So all of these three core concepts tied in together kind of make zero trust. There are certain other concepts that people add on, you could say, but these three are the most essential ones for sure.
Mm.
Uh,
Hearing all those, Surya, makes the security side of me very, very happy, which is good. But the developer, like I come from a developer background. Before my current role, I actually all the roles I did was developer based. The developer side of me is having a nightmare that doing all these, let's say where we need to do authentication check in
yeah.
every single step of the application, that's a lot of work, not only from development side, but
Mm-hmm.
also it introduce a lot of friction, right?
Yeah.
So instead of, let's say you want to go from here to, let's say to the train station, and once you get checked once, but from here to the train station, if you were checked 5 times, you were told 5 times to put your password in.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a huge pain. Imagine browsing a web page, and each page you load, they ask you the password again.
I think
Um,
that's where there's like it's like when you're verifying like the verify explicitly part, it's not just on the login, it's also a few other data points that are added.
mhm.
But also like this is where like you have like SSO and like Samalot and other stuff that you tie into for sure. Um,
So how does that help, Surya, for our audience? How does SSO kind of
it's kind of
reduce the
basically
pain point?
so like for example, if you have a Microsoft account, right, and your organization is using, for example, Atlassian's Jira or Confluence, you're like, hey, I
Hmm.
want to use SSO sign in and I have this Microsoft AAD or Azure AD account, right? So what it basically does is that I'll only need those credentials to then log into this service or this application. So you can use that to not just log into Atlassian like Jira or Confluence and stuff like that, but you can also use that to start logging into like Microsoft services too. So it's like a single strong authentication that you could use across different
One
services.
ring to rule them all.
Yeah, yeah. That's why you want to like have one strong one. So you like you have strong password rules, you have MFA, and you can apply all of these with like conditional access policies and so on.
So the when I was coming through these concepts,
Mm-hmm.
the devil's advocate side of me was thinking that, hey, do we trust people with one single password? And in my mind, the answer was, if instead of one password, if they had to log in 20 times, do we expect our users to use 20 different passwords, 20 different strong passwords? And the answer I was leaning towards is probably no.
No,
So
yeah.
instead of that, having that one fortified password can it's counterintuitive, but it actually can help out a
Yeah.
bit.
You could think about it like an intermediary solution that came up because of this problem is like all the password managers. If you think about it, you have one strong password for your password manager, and then your password manager generates random passwords for the
Mm.
others. It's an interesting point if you think about it.
And the more I explored zero trust, the other thing I realized that the one of the main things that's stopping companies from implementing it right now today is the complexity.
Yep.
Like all these things are a huge deal. It's not just on the user side that is friction, but also the tech side, right? Because when we are trying to have the amount of visibility that zero trust needs, the amount of integrations, the amount of back-end work that needs to happen, that's just huge. That's very complicated, very complex. I
Yeah.
definitely see a resource shortage thing as well.
I would say absolutely, like, to a certain extent. Of course, if a company is committed to implementing it, they can do it.
Hmm.
But for sure, I think maybe in a few years' time, it can get more streamlined. But at the current moment, for sure, there are a few places where it's adding friction. Uh, I think another point, as you said, like using different passwords in different places, that could also be if people didn't have like SSO based auth and you had to log in with different passwords in each places, it'll start getting confusing for the users, and the users
Yeah,
will start
yeah.
using weak passwords. So in the end, it kind of reduces security to a certain extent because people
It
are not
does.
using
It does.
strong.
Password management is it's not a surprising thing, right? It is
Yeah,
the one of the biggest pain points we
yeah,
have as a security industry.
yeah. I think
Which
yeah.
which leads us to our the segue that was for the audience, that was not planned. That was a very organic segue
We both at
to
the same time hit up like, hey, we should
yeah.
go now.
Yeah, yeah. So which brings us to the other point I was very sort of passionate about when we were talking about identity in modern workplace ourselves and doing this research was passwordless. So passwordless itself is not it's not a brand new thing, but it's taking like in most of our phones and devices, we already do biometric authentication,
Yep.
right? Our fingerprint, our voice print, our face. But what if we did that for websites when we are accessing our bank, when we are accessing social media? We don't need to handle that remembering password side of things. And it has sort of that element of multi-factor authentication baked in. So the reason I'm so hopeful and interested in this concept is I recently attended the ISA conference in Canberra a few months ago, and all the passwordless talks were just fabulous. I could see, obviously, there are challenges which I'm going to touch on, but just from a user experience side, like instead of having to put in my password and you have a password manager do that, what imagine the concept that each time I am logging into, let's say, Instagram, logging into Facebook, I can just, it will give my phone a prompt and I can just say that, verify it using
Yeah.
my face or my,
Biometrics. Yeah.
yeah, biometrics, and I'm done, right?
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things I'm also hopeful is all the big vendors, Apple. Microsoft, Google are finally on board.
I think
They're
they
not
are, right?
exhaustive.
I
They
think
are on
they
board.
are. They
They are.
are on board. Yeah.
That's why I'm hopeful, because if you think about it, those three combined probably it's nearing 100% of coverage in terms of devices.
I think they have very big leverage within the industry. You know, if like when
Yeah.
Google is like, "Hey, I will push this on Chrome," it like kind of drives the rest of the industry to also follow
Yeah.
up. So in a similar way, if people start implementing fee or passwordless based authentication, I
Hmm.
won't jump ahead. You know, it'll start driving the concept across the industry, and that is always very helpful.
Mm, mm. And for the audience, why this is gonna be so useful, and we're not gonna jump too much into the technicalities of passwordless. We actually have an episode fully planned where we go deep into, but if you think of a lot of the modern attacks, they are somewhat related to harvesting the user's password and misusing it, right?
Yeah,
So you collect that, you have your social engineering attacks to all the way to your keyloggers and um, let's say the broken authentication, right?
yeah,
So from that side of things, uh, it's a big shift. So if you switch to something like passwordless, a
mm-hmm.
whole attack class, something like phishing, which we talked about in our previous episodes. Audience, if you haven't, check it out. It should pop up into this YouTube video somewhere, or I'll just drop the link. But a big attack vector like phishing gets hugely reduced uh, by migrating into a passwordless
Yep,
architecture. We have already seen how big of an impact multi-factor authentication has on phishing and social media engineering attacks. I should say social engineering attacks based on password, not all kinds of social engineering.
yep.
And passwordless is just going to be, in my opinion, I shouldn't say the silver bullet, but in my opinion, a huge leap in securing that side of things.
Yeah, I think one common thing, like, you know, if I was a user, okay, and I got a
Hmm.
phishing mail, okay, I clicked on it and then it asked me for login details, right? It
Hmm.
asked me for username and password, right? That'll immediately flag me that's a cred harvesting campaign, like that's trying to harvest my creds. And
Mm,
because I used a passwordless solution, like this should not pop up. It should pop up and request
mm.
for my, like YubiKey or another way of like doing passwordless authentication. So in that way, it kind of reduces a lot of phishing attacks that come through, because most of them are targeted towards gathering creds in the back, right? And if
Yeah.
you remove the part, like you technically don't, you kind of remove the part of creds being the primary way of authentication, right? And then users will start suspecting them more because they're like, hey, this is not supposed to come. And you can train users to that, which is very
The
handy.
social side,
Yeah,
it's like a
very,
new
very
habit
handy.
formation because everywhere we go now, we need to put in our passwords, and that is normalized.
Yep,
But when we adopt passwordless more, the giving passwords is gonna be the, let's say, the outlier. That's where the alarm bells will go on.
yep.
That being said, Surya, I'm not also just drinking the Kool-Aid and all starry-eyed. I do know it has some challenges. And one of the things I could think of is human users are not the only places that need password. If you think of embedded systems, if you think of IoT devices,
Yeah.
how do you do passwordless for them? They don't have biometrics. So that is a whole challenge of its own.
Yeah.
Now, a
You
lot
could.
of developments are happening from the FIDO Alliance regarding IoT and biometrics, but it's a hard challenge.
Yeah. What do you think about if you had like service accounts? That would be an
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
one.
How
How
do you
you
do
do the
those, right?
password, yes.
So
And also,
that's
like
huge.
the other, like, to go to another point of challenge that I had. Hey, what if I lose my device? That is the
Mm,
primary authentication. So if I'm using my phone, all right, it is my biometric passwordless authentication that I'm using. I lose it, right?
yeah.
Then what? Then do I go back to passwords, right?
So
Uh,
the way people are approaching this is once you lose your authenticator,
mm-hmm.
usually it's a third party software, right? Whether it's Apple, whether it's a third party authenticator like
Yeah,
LastPass. What people are going towards now is some sort of government or um, uh, ID verification. So you need
ooh,
to upload your ID to show who you are. And yeah, it would be either automated or somewhat manual review. Now, a lot of questions can arise, right? When you are
Yes,
putting in
yes.
your ID. So the FIDO Alliance is moving towards a ID-based verification, and they know the challenges as well, right? Because
A lot
that
of
ID,
privacy issues. Yeah.
first of all privacy, secondly the security. These are sensitive documents.
Yes.
So they are doing a whole range of certifications and checks to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that first, privacy is being ensured, and secondly, all these are happening in a secure way. One of the challenges I see is in this ID verification loop, there can be a session hijack. It's one of my future thoughts that I'm gonna reiterate soon,
Yeah.
that going forward, I see a class of attacks where people session hijack of people's ID proofing or that recovery phase.
Yeah.
So how do we prove or strengthen that part? It's going to be crucial into that passwordless adoption.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge for sure. I'll agree on that. I also think like, like shifting, like I feel like there's a very good chance our second layer is till we get to the stage where this ID stuff gets flushed out, it'll always end up being passwords, right? Like if
Mm,
someone were to implement passwordless in today, I feel like there's a very good chance that the primary way will be passwordless, and then a fallback mechanisms would be passwords, and then
yeah.
instead of resetting passwords, like for example PCI, I think PCI compliance requires you to reset passwords every 60 days. You reset it every year. I'm not sure if it'll pass PCI. Don't quote me on that. But I'm saying instead of having users reset a password every 60 days, right? And people are like, oh, 123 exclamation mark. Okay, next month 123 exclamation mark at the
Ma-
rate. Right. So instead of them going through that, they can actually have time to think of a proper
Yeah,
password that
yeah,
they could use
yeah.
for a year.
So
So
I heard a very good quote for this, and I think it resonates with what actually is going to happen in the
mhm.
future, that we are not gonna go completely passwordless, but we're gonna have less passwords. So
Spicy.
is that, yeah, spicy. We're not gonna go passwordless, but we're gonna have much, much less passwords because authenticators are gonna take the place of that day-to-day authentication. Passwords will be reserved for that initial registration to your authenticator or that like a master password thing and recovery.
Or
I
you
feel
could
like it will have somewhat based into it.
I think that's an interesting point. If you log into like medium.com, right? To sign up, you don't sign up directly. Like it'll send you a link to your email first. That's the first
Yeah,
step it
yeah, the
does, right?
registration
It's
phase.
it's
Yeah,
completely different from what. So,
yeah, yeah.
things can
We'll
change.
touch on that in that passwordless episode we're
Yeah.
gonna have in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah.
So it'll be a very
Sure.
nice thing to go into.
I think this is a good point to like switch to our future thoughts on what we think about going forward. I think to start off with, like, if I had to start off with like
Hmm.
zero trust, right? I think the reason why it's moving and the reason why it'll keep moving forward is us moving more towards hybrid environments, us moving more towards a cloud native environment or more cloud focused environment. So we want to protect our data first, right?
Yeah.
And uh, having those concepts of zero trust being deployed gives us more confidence as security folks, right? Uh, I think the second thing, as you mentioned, I think this kind of ties in with zero trust is the passwordless part. I feel like we'll move to a place in zero trust where we start reducing friction. Like rather than matching the friction at the current level, we actually start reducing it, right?
Hmm.
And I think that is key because we want to gain the user's confidence to using this maybe more secure way, you could say, into gaining access to the systems and having an ease of use for them, right? And that will show improve their acceptance for these tools. uh, and I think a third or a very interesting one I had thought of, like, like since zero trust is based on us having different data points that we're going to get, like me as like a SOC analyst kind of like a consultant is like, oh, I'm going to get logs from so many different sources, right? And I'm like, hey, so I get authentication logs. I get like his privilege like him escalating his privileges, and him moving across different network segments and stuff like that. All of these logs are super interesting, right? And thinking about it being used in AI or ML, right?
Mm,
All of these different log sources. You're getting so many
so much
points,
data.
yeah, so many points of information combine them in a model that could like add context, right? And you're like, mainly this is useful for detecting anomalous behavior. You're like, hey, this guy has never moved from this
We
network
have lots more
segments.
checkpoints, right?
Yeah,
So we have lots more data points to work on.
yeah. So like this guy has never moved to these two network segments in like the last 15 days or something. I'm just saying
Mm.
some random way of detecting anomalous content, right? And you're like, hey, why is he doing that? This is completely out of the ordinary for him, right? And those are like really good points for us as security folk to check on. Like, hey, this is not regular activity. Why is this happening? And stuff like that are very interesting points. And I think the last one, which I think should start happening, is that it's a concept, right?
Hmm.
And I think it really needs a really good framework to start building on it, and it needs a collaboration of industry personnel from the different points of identity, network, endpoints, all of them to combine together to form a good framework or stable working ground, right? And I think NIST did a good one. NIST has a pretty good framework, but I feel like this could cause a lot of issue in the later stages where it could start getting fragmented, where people could have different ideas about how zero trust should be done, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think having
There'll
a
always be
core,
multiple camps and
yeah,
different people doing different
exactly.
way.
So having a good core camp at least would be really helpful. And I think a few are starting to come up now, and a few are
Mm.
in way. I think those are the main ones I had in zero trust. Do you have anything
That's
else to
actually
add,
that's
Kev?
very, very interesting. I like the some of the later ones you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, in terms of future predictions, there's a few to I like to think, or sort of I would like, from my thought process, I think it can possibly happen that the first thing I think is people are having challenges implementing zero trust now.
Yeah,
With the benefits and the push behind the industry, it's gonna be solved. But once zero trust is implemented, people are gonna have challenges maintaining zero trust. All that infrastructure, it's gonna be super complex, super bloated, and a lot of moving parts.
yeah.
So I foresee, maybe this is a startup idea, maybe for us, maybe for our listeners, that there would be vendors that will specialize in um,
Managing
maintaining,
and
managing, and complying with that zero trust architecture going forward. So that's one of the challenges I see going forward because
mm-hmm.
there's a lot of friction adopting it now. But once people have adopted, it's just such a big mammoth of a thing to handle. So I see some issues popping up with
I
that.
think it's because it's covering a
A
a lot of things.
wide
Yeah,
of range of things, right? It's
yeah.
very easy to lose visibility of one thing, and it's very easy to, you know, it's zero trust is not one of those things where you set on and forget. It needs
I think
active
most of
management.
security is,
Yeah, it needs
you know,
active management, right?
yeah.
So because of the complexity it brings, um, it will deter some companies from adopting it.
Yeah, sure. I think it like for sure needs more refinement, more thought
Yeah,
put into
yeah.
it, and that'll make it a better place for
Mm.
people to implement zero trust. Yeah, I think those are some interesting points that you had. Do you have any in regards to passwordless? I had one which I love
Yeah,
saying
go.
is that
Love to see here.
I think, as you said, right, more password, like less passwords in the future, and more of these kind of authentications. I
Mm.
completely agree with that, and I feel that we are going to end up in a place where, like, the issue with passwordless at the moment, at least I can see, is that most of it has been revolved around using like hardware tokens, like FIDO based hardware tokens. We have like YubiKeys and other hardware based tokens. There are also a few starting to come up now for using our
YubiKeys for
mobile
the win.
YubiKeys for the win. Yeah, using our mobile auths, right? Using our mobile. So like if I'm now doing multi-factor authentication, I'm using like authenticator from like Google or Microsoft or whoever it may
Hmm.
be to like add as my second layer of multi-factor authentication, like push notifications, right? Stuff like that. So maybe bringing that part of passwordless into your mobile, right? I think it's already happening, but I feel
Yeah,
like
it is.
it'll get more evolved, right? So it's not just
Yeah.
using your touch, your face, can
I feel
also be
like
other stuff.
mobiles would be the main vehicle of.
Yep. Yeah. I also feel like there could be other interesting avenues where also it could start moving towards. And, like some computers come with like inbuilt features like Windows Hello and stuff.
Mm.
Uh, right.
Big push with that
Yeah. So like it's like
Microsoft's
it's
thing,
like
yeah.
it's like I feel like in the
Apple's
end,
passkey, Windows Hello,
yeah,
everyone is
I
starting
think
to
it's
do
like
their
it's
thing. Yeah.
slowly tying around that circle of like passwordless spreading across the board, and I feel that it'll surely go that way for sure.
Mm. So with passwordless, I one of the predictions I have is it's gonna, if not done properly, and I feel like hackers always will find a way.
Mm-hmm.
Life finds a way, as it was said in Jurassic Park, that a whole range of new attack surfaces are gonna pop up. So
Yes.
firstly, the main two ones I see is the one of the core selling points of zero trust is the sensitive information and the useful data never leaves the user's devices, right?
Mm-hmm.
That remote devices. How we do sensitive data management in this device, it's gonna be key. So I
Yeah.
see some attacks surrounding that and also some attack vectors with retrieving your lost FIDO
Yeah.
or hardware authenticator. So I see those kind of attacks sort of getting more popular as you know it takes time to raise that awareness. Other things I do see regarding zero trust in terms of challenges is with embedded systems, IoT devices, right? How do you do um, zero trust and passwordless for those? I've seen some smart solutions. FIDO Alliance have these very cool routers that you can just drop in, and then it will automatically enable passwordless for all the IoT devices. It's like a hub.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done much research. I need to come off clean that I haven't done much research on IoT and passwordless. So that's the avenue I'm gonna
Yeah.
look into further.
I think that's a very interesting point. I think another one, something that I probably expect to happen is that phishing is currently based heavily on passwords, right? Like credit harvesters that come out or with those links usually have like a Microsoft Auth or some other
Mm.
authentication page where you basically trying to log in, add your username and password. I'm pretty sure they'll start like if passwordless gets started to be implemented,
Prompts,
yeah,
yeah,
widely
something
more
else.
implemented, they'll start shifting more towards those.
Yeah, so phishing won't, I feel like
It
it's
won't
not gonna
die.
vanish.
Yeah.
It's just gonna change medium.
Yep.
So it's a very the popular attack vector with multi-factor authentication I saw was you spam the authentication or the multi-factor
Yeah.
authentication, right? So
Yep.
you send them 20, are you trying to authenticate? Are you trying to authenticate? And the users just get frustrated and say yes.
Yep.
And then it's legitimate attack
True, true,
vector.
true,
It's
true. It's
happening a
it's
lot.
it's it's
So
a very, I think, I can't remember the names of the attacks, but some of the most common attacks that happen because of that. Because
mm.
their passwords got compromised, but their MFA didn't get compromised, right? So what these attackers do is just spam MFA.
Spam the
So
MFA.
you're getting like 20, 30 prompts in an hour. You're like, what is going on,
What is
right?
going on?
And
And
you're
you
like,
just
you just like accept. You're like, oh man, screw this. I'm just gonna approve. And
mm,
you approve, and then boom, it stops. It stops for you, but you have given the attacker access to your account. I think a solution that's popped up like for a while now is that we use so when you select approve, it also asks you for a number that you need
mm.
to add.
You need
Or
to add, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's
That's a
like,
you need
yeah,
to be in front of the screen,
exactly. like
actually.
like
Yeah.
so like, hey, so it'll be like 72 is the number it like shows in my computer, like add this on your phone. So
Yeah.
even if you click on approve, you need to add that number still.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
kind of adding layers to prevent
Exactly.
this from happening.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Looking at the time, Surya, we are definitely closing. We should wrap it up,
yeah,
but I can 100% understand why today we ran a bit of overtime or this video is a bit longer.
yeah.
This is just such an interesting conversation to have, and we're gonna unpack it more in our following few episodes. So do stick around, and if you wanna dive deep into this interesting concept of identity, zero trust, passwordless, and much more, then please do subscribe and stick around. We are actually launching on podcasts. We are now on Spotify, so
Hooray.
you can catch us not just on the video form. And if you have grown tired of looking at Surya's wonderful face, you can now go and just listen to our melodious voices on Spotify. So thank you again. Thanks, Surya. I absolutely love this conversation as always, and thanks to our audience for listening.
I say, man, thank you. Thanks, guys. All right,
Bye,
see you
everyone.
next episode. Bye.